Welcome to the session. We are having a quick recap of how organisms reproduce, science for class 10. Now, we have seen in the earlier video about the ways of reproduction, asexual and sexual, and we have seen how the plants reproduce. Now, we will see about the humans. Unisexual reproduction means distinct sexual dimorphism is available. But in human beings, we have reproductive systems. We have reproductive systems. What is that? The primary sex organs are there. What are they? Gonads, which produce the gametes or the sex cells. And the primary sex organs secrete the sex hormones. Reproductive system is two parts for human beings and most of the mammals. The primary sex organs are the gonads, which produce a gamete, that's a sex cell, and the sex hormones. The secondary organs are genital duct, the gland, etc., which help the sex cells produce in the gametes to reach the right place for the right process. So genital ducts and glands help in transportation of the gametes. Only then reproduction can happen because the male and female sex cells are there in animals, which are not necessarily the case in unicellular organisms which do not have a distinct sexual dimorphism. In human beings, we have a distinct sexual dimorphism. That means what? We can identify a male or we can identify a female. What is puberty? Puberty is a stage when reproductive organs become functional, a life stage when reproductive organs become functional. Means what? The period of sexual maturity. Puberty is the period of sexual maturity. That is during adolescence. That means what? A child is becoming an adult. This is a stage at which secondary sex characters develop in the child. Gametogenesis. Gametogenesis is a production of the haploid gametes by diploid multicellular organisms. Diploid is two. Diploid multicellular organisms. So the process of meiosis. Meiosis is reproductive cell division. What is gametogenesis? It consists of oogenesis and spermatogenesis. It means what? Production of the eggs and the production of the sperms. Oogenesis and spermatogenesis. When primary oocyte undergoes meiosis, a large haploid secondary oocyte and a small first polar body is formed. Mostly these polar bodies are of not much use. Right? In males, we have a separate reproductive organ. In females, we have a separate reproductive organ. The reproductive system consists of the sex organs and the primary and secondary. What is primary? Gonads and the hormone secretion, and in secondary it is the ducts and the glands. All this put together, all the four put together, the sex cells, the hormones and the glands and the ducts all together is called the reproductive system in men and women. In males, what happens is during adolescence. What is during adolescence? During puberty. Enlargement of the penis and scrotum happens. Broadening of the shoulder happens. Deepening of the voice, enlargement of the larynx and thickening of the vocal cord. The voice changes. The child's voice becomes a man's voice. Why? Because of the enlargement of larynx. Causes what? Causes a thickening of the vocal cords. Growth of pubic hair happens. That is, extra hair on the face, armpits, etc. also happens in males. Right? How does the sexual organs or the process happen in males? Testis is a pair. It is in pair. It is outside the abdominal cavity. Testis is outside the abdominal cavity. Why it is outside? So that the temperature of the testis is maintained at least 2-3 degrees lesser than the body temperature. Right? This testis helps in production of male gametes. Male gametes are called sperms. The sex cells of the males are called the sperms. The testis also secretes a hormone called testosterone. That is why we found that there are sex cells, there are hormones, there are ducts, there are glands. There are four things in a sex organ of a male or a female. So, testis is a pair. It is on the abdominal cavity. It produces a male gametes and it secretes testosterone. Then there is a part called Vas Deferens. This is a Vas Deferens. Vas Deferens is what? It is a tube, and it is also a pair. It's a tube, it's a pair. It carries the sperms to the seminal vesicles. These are the seminal vesicles. These are the seminal vesicles. The vas deferens carries a sperm from the testes to the seminal vesicle. What does seminal vesicle do? It secretes a mucus and alkaline watery fluid that contains fructose. Why it is that fructose? Fructose gives energy for the sperms to survive. It also produces a watery fluid so that the sperms can float or swim. And this seminal vesicle opens into a duct, ejaculatory duct. This is called the ejaculatory duct, and this opens into the urethra. This is the urethra. The seminal vesicle opens into the ejaculatory duct, which leads into the urethra. What is urethra? Urethra is the pathway. Urethra is a pathway. In this pathway, flow of urine happens and semen happens. Flow of urine and flow of semen both happens through urethra. So it is a pathway. Now semen runs through the penis. Urethra is inside the penis. Penis is a muscular part, while urethra is a tubular part, and opens outside through the male genital pore. It opens through the male genital pore. Penis is the long, thick, muscular organ having erectile tissues. Gland penis is the soft, highly sensitive tip. Penis is the organ that helps in copulation. Penis is the organ through which the semen is transferred into the vagina. Penis is the male sex organ. So this is about the male. For the female, what happens during puberty or adolescence? Growth of breast and external genitalia, which is called vulva. Growth of breast and external genitalia called vulva happens. Broadening of the pelvis, just like broadening of the shoulder for men. Initiation of menstruation and ovulation. During the puberty or adolescence, initiation of menstruation and ovulation happens. Ovulation is creation of ova, ovagenesis, oogenesis. Growth of pubic hair and extra hair in the armpits, etc. happens. The formation of the ova in a female happens even before the birth. It happens in the fetus itself, not necessarily after the child is born. The formation of the ova happens in the fetus itself. At birth, a child has about 2 to 3 lakhs of immature ova. This ova slowly matures and becomes egg capable of getting fertilized into and growing into an offspring. Now, what are the parts? Uterus is a part, fallopian tube, the funnel or the oviduct which connects the uterus to the ovary. Ovary and uterus are the important part, and the fallopian tube is a connecting tube. Right? The uterus lining ends in cervix, which leads to uterus muscular wall and vagina. Now through the vagina, the sperm is received, and also for the childbirth also happens through the vagina. So these are the parts of the female organ. Now ovaries are also in pairs, just like testes are in pairs, ovaries are in pairs. This is the ovary. It is almond shaped. It is on the lower abdominal cavity. It is near the kidneys. It is connected to the uterus by the ligament. This is the ligament. It is connected by a ligament, ovarian ligament. Right? It does two important things. One is production of the female gametes. Production of the female gamete. That is the sex cells. Just like the sperm, the female gametes or the eggs or the ova. Right? Second is secretion of the female sex hormones, which are estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen and progesterone. Here we have seen it produces sperms and it produces testosterone. Right? Here it produces estrogen and progesterone, and it also produces ova. Right? One mature ovum is released from either of the ovaries. So one from there and from here, one mature ovum is released. It is called ovulation. Ovulation happens when puberty is attained. The beginning of the ovulation in female is also part of the puberty or adolescence process. Right? Every 28 days. This is one of the job done by the ovary. What is fallopian tube? These are the fallopian tubes. These are called oviduct. Oviduct means what? The tube for the eggs. The eggs are carried in this ducts. Paired tube is originating from the uterus, terminating in a funnel-shaped finger-like projection. Funnel-shaped finger-like projection is called fimbriae. Funnel-shaped finger-like projection called fimbriae. This directs the ovum from the ovary into the fallopian tube. This fallopian ovum from the ovary to the fallopian tube. What is that fimbriae? What is a fimbriae? Finger-like projections at the end of the fallopian tube. Fallopian tube are the paired tubes originating from the uterus. The terminal part, the end of the fallopian tube is funnel shaped. It is funnel shaped and has finger-like projections called fimbriae. How is fimbriae helping? They direct the ovum from the ovary to the fallopian tube. They direct the ovum from the ovary to the fallopian tube. Fallopian tube connects the ovary to the uterus. Right? What is uterus? Uterus is in the pelvic cavity. It is single. This is in pairs. This is in pairs. This is single. It is an inverted pear shaped. The uterus is inverted pear shaped. It is highly muscular. It is a hollow structure. Why it is hollow structure? Because it needs to contain something inside. That is why it is called womb. It is called womb. Development of the fetus occurs inside the narrower inside. Development of the fetus happens inside. The narrower part is called the cervix. The narrower part is called the cervix. It is an inverted pear shape. It is muscular. It is hollow. It is also called womb. The narrower part is called the cervix. Cervix extends into the vagina. Cervix extends into the vagina. Vagina is what? It is a 10 to 7 centimeters. It is 10 to 7 centimeters long tube. It is a tube. It is a singular tube. It is uterus also singular. It helps in passage of the menstrual flow. 1. It helps in passage of the menstrual flow. 2. It receives the sperm discharged by the penis. It receives the sperm discharged by the penis. And 3. It acts as a birth canal. It acts as a birth canal. In the uterus, the fetus grows and through the cervix, it enters the vagina and this is how the childbirth happens. It is called parturition. Parturition. So birth canal, it acts as a birth canal, it acts as a passage for the menstrual flow, it receives the sperm discharged by the penis. These are the parts or the functions of the male and female sex organs in a human being. Now sexual reproduction, one of the important phase is the menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle. The cycle begins in a female when she attains puberty, that is adolescence. Regulated by sex hormones. When the menstrual cycle should happen is regulated by the sex hormones. Sex hormones are produced by what? Sex hormones are produced as estrogen and progesterone in the ovaries. It repeats every 28 days. That is why it is called a cycle. It repeats every 28 days. It is marked by bleeding. The bleeding is called the menstrual flow. That is why we found that it is a passage for the menstrual flow. It is the birth canal. And then it is the receiver of the discharged sperms from the penis, marked by bleeding menstrual flow. Single egg is released from either of the two ovaries. A single egg is released from either of the two ovaries. Right? This is the mature ovum. The single egg is called the mature ovum. Every 28 days it is released. Single egg is released from either of the two ovaries. Inner wall of the uterus, endometrium, readies to receive the fertilized egg. Inner wall of the uterus. This is the inner wall of the uterus. The inner wall of the uterus readies to receive the fertilized egg. This is part of the menstrual cycle. If ovum gets fertilized by the sperm, a zygote is formed, embryo starts developing. If ovum gets fertilized by the sperm, a zygote is formed, embryo starts developing. So embryo develops where? In case it is fertilized. How you will know it is fertilized or not? The ovary, this is a funnel of the oviduct, and through the fallopian tubes, it directs the ovum from the ovary into the fallopian tube where it comes, right? The sperm comes from the penis into the vagina. So if and only if it is fertilized, then zygote is formed and embryo develops. Till the birth of the child, neither any egg is released from the ovary or any menstruation takes place. Till the birth of the child. If fertilization does not take place, the egg is expelled through the vagina. Bleeding is caused by breaking of the endometrium. Bleeding is caused by the breaking of the endometrium. This is the inner wall. Breaking of the endometrium. Menarche is the first menstruation. Menarche is the first menstruation. Menopause is almost the last menstruation. At around 50-55 years of old, ovaries stop releasing further eggs. So menarche and menopause. Now this endometrium, though it breaks sometime around day 14 in the menstruation cycle, it regenerates. The endometrium regenerates, it repairs, it becomes okay again, and it becomes ready to receive the next embryo in the next 14-15 days. So that is why the menstrual cycle is of 28 days. First a single egg is released by the ovaries, and if the fertilization happens, the embryo will start developing. If it does not happen, the egg is expelled through the vagina. Bleeding is caused by breaking of the endometrium. Menstruation is this bleeding where the egg is expelled. Right? It occurs 14 days after the ovulation. It occurs 14 days after the ovulation and lasts for 5 days. After this, the endometrium, which ruptured, gets repaired and becomes ready to receive the next embryo. And then by around day 28, the next cycle begins and single egg is again released. Menarche is the first menstruation, menopause is the last one. This is about the menstrual process. Now comes fertilization. Fertilization. Sperms are produced in testes of the male and are transferred into the vagina of the female during the intercourse. Ovum is released from the ovary during ovulation, that is the menstrual cycle, and is swept into the adjacent fallopian tube. The fusion of the nucleus of the sperm and the nucleus of the ovum marks the completion of fertilization. A single-celled zygote is formed in the fallopian tube. So from here the sperms come, the eggs have come here, and a zygote is formed in the fallopian tube. Zygote then undergoes repeated mitotic divisions, mitosis. Mitosis is multiplication, meiosis is generation. Mitotic divisions to form a blastula. It forms a blastula. On the 7th day, it descends and implants into the uterus. On day 7, it comes and sits inside, sits itself inside, settles itself into the uterus on day 7. Placenta. What is placenta? Placenta is a specialized tissue of the fetus and uterine wall of the mother. It is a mechanical as well as psychological connection. Mechanical connection because it connects the fetus to the uterine wall. It is the psychological, physiological connection. Physiological connection because it transfers food and takes back the waste. Psychological connection because that is the connection between the mother and the child. Embryo and the uterine wall of the mother. Nutrients enter the fetus from the blood of the mother, and the waste expelled by the child from the fetus into the blood of the mother also happens through this placenta. The remainings of the placenta can be seen in a child when it is immediately born. It is actually cut in case of a hospital birth. What is gestation? Development of the fetus from conception to the birth is called gestation. The period during which the fetus remains in the mother's womb develops is called gestation. Normally it takes up to 280 days. That is almost 10 months. That is almost 40 weeks. And this is normally calculated from the last date of the menstruation. What is special about menstruation? Because the menstruation happens, that is ovum is released from the ovary, and then by around day 14 if no fertilization happens, it breaks the wall and then the egg is released out. So it lasts for about 4 to 5 days. So the last day from that day the 280 days is calculated. Parturition. What is parturition? That is the expulsion of the fully formed young one from the mother's uterus after the gestation period. Oxytocin hormone is very important because it is the hormone that causes the contraction of the uterine wall. It contracts so that it pushes the baby out. So this contraction happens because of oxytocin hormone. There is another hormone which works, that is called relaxin hormone. So on the uterine wall, oxytocin works to help contraction, and the relaxin widens the pelvis and vagina. Okay. Now, this is the yellow color is the ovum, the egg. The pink color is the sperm. When the sperm, there are multiple sperms released. Mostly only one sperm is able to penetrate and enter the egg and fertilize. Once the fertilization happens, this is the ovary. This is what part? This is called the fimbriae. From the fimbriae, the ova enters, the sperm also enters. Fertilization happens in the fallopian tube. That is why some people have a complication. The fertilized egg remains in the fallopian tube but does not fall or come and implant into the uterus. It needs a surgical intervention. So this undergoes mitotic division. What division it undergoes? It undergoes mitotic division. It undergoes mitotic division. And then for how many days? For 8 days. There are 8 celled uncompacted monula and then it gets compacted. Once it is compacted, it is called a blastula. Once it becomes a blastula. And then after it becomes blastula on day 8, it gets embedded into the uterus. Inside uterus, you have a uterine wall, and then you have a placenta. A tubular structure that connects the child to the mother. This is also called the umbilical cord on the end nearer to the child. Fetus. This is your navel button, navy button, right? This is the fetus. The uterus is the whole portion. The cervix is the narrow portion of the uterus. So, the male and female sex cells. In plant, we call it as a germination. Here, we call it as a fertilization. After that, they divide and multiply, becomes 8 cell compacted and then uncompacted and compacted. On day 8, blastocyst is hatched and then it gets implanted. It gets implanted into the uterus. This is the uterus. This is a hollow tube or the womb in which the child develops. Reproductive health is very important because if the reproductive health is not managed well, monitored well, then it will affect the health of both the mother and the child. So it has to be holistic. It is not just taking care of the sex organs or keeping them clean or keeping them healthy. It is physical, emotional, social and behavioral aspects of the mother and the child during the gestation period. So it is at the personal level, the person has to be taken care, and community level, community should be cooperative. So what are the necessary inputs for reproductive health? One is knowledge of the organs, knowledge of the functioning of the organs and sex education. Then knowledge of the methods to prevent sexually transmitted diseases. And strategies to control population, strategies to control childbirth. Awareness about birth control methods. What are the methods available? Prevention of sexual abuse, prevention of sex related crimes, and managing and maintaining fertility by managing and maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Now, some countries want to increase their population, some countries want to decrease their population, different reasons in different geographical areas. Regulation of the population, that is reduction or control of the number of people, can be done by regulating the conception. What is conception means what? Conceive means give birth to. See, help the fertilization of the male and female sex cells into an embryo. So why we need to regulate? Because too many population or too much population or too large a population is causing scarcity of food. Then there is also scarcity of other natural resources. There is enough for man's need but not for the greed. We need infrastructure, housing, school, hospital, all those things that we may not be able to provide if the population grows. Frequent pregnancies will deteriorate mother's health. When the female species of the population is having poor health due to frequent pregnancy, then the whole species will suffer. Contraception is a method called prevention of pregnancy. Contraception is a method used for prevention of pregnancy. So these are the reasons or methods for regulating the consumption. That is one way of reducing the population. Now, contraception can be in multiple methods. One of the methods is a barrier method. What is a barrier method? Creating a fence, barrier. Physical devices that prevent the entry of sperm into vagina is called a barrier. During copulation, the sperms will try to enter the vagina. So, when you are preventing that using a physical device, it is called a barrier method. One example is a thin rubber tube called condoms worn on the penis. Another example is a thin tube that fits inside the vagina called femidome. Then there is a rubber cover that fits on over the cervix in the vagina. Over the cervix in the vagina, it is called the cervical cap. These are the barrier methods. Now comes the chemical methods. Spermicide, cream or jelly, when applied to vagina, what it will do? It will immobilize or kill the sperms that enter. And there is hormones like estrogen and progesterone that prevent ovulation. Hormones like estrogen, progesterone cause ovulation actually, but then you control that hormone by reducing their secretion, and in turn you prevent the ovulation. This is done by oral contraceptive pills, which is a chemical compound. Then you have intrauterine contraceptive device. Contraceptive is prevention of contraception is what? Contraception is prevention of pregnancy. How you do? You prevent the conception. How you prevent the conception? By using contraceptive device. That is intrauterine. Intrauterine means inside. Device is made of copper or plastic or steel. Copper TRL is used. It is inserted. That is why it is called intra. It is inserted into to prevent implantation of the blastula in uterus. To prevent the implantation of the blastula into the uterus, it is inserted inside. That is one method. Intrauterine. Then you have a natural method. One is rhythm. Rhythm is avoid copulation around the time of ovulation. Avoid copulation around the time of ovulation. Another is coitus interruptus. Coitus interruptus is withdrawal of the penis before ejaculation. Withdrawal of the penis before ejaculation. Now, population control is also done by surgical methods. One is vasectomy. Vasectomy is removal of the vas deferens and then preventing the sperm from coming out. Preventing the sperm from coming out. Second is tubectomy. Removal of a small portion of the fallopian tube. Removal of small portion of the fallopian tube and preventing the egg ovum to enter the uterus. Preventing the sperms from coming out or preventing the eggs to come into the fallopian tube is vasectomy or tubectomy. There is something called hysterectomy. Hysterectomy is removing the womb. Removing the womb. So what will happen? The blastula cannot come and settle. Female to male ratio is declining due to prejudice. Prejudice is more in some community they like male, some community they like only female. Sex determination is done by what? By process called amniocentesis or radio imaging, and then you will come to know whether the child inside is a male or female. And because of the prejudice, abortion is done. Abortion is what? Medical termination of pregnancy. That means what? You ensure that you do not allow the child to grow inside the uterus but push it out even before the gestation period is over and the child is fully grown. Now, there are sexually transmitted diseases. There are 30 different kinds of diseases which are in humans, known in humans. They spread from infected person to healthy person by sexual contact. Sexually transmitted diseases spread from infected person to healthy person by sexual contact. It is infectious, it is communicable disease and it's caused by bacteria, protozoa, viruses, etc. One example is gonorrhea. Gonorrhea does what? Gonorrhea is inflammation of the mucous membrane of the urinogenital tract. Urinogenital tract, rectum, throat, etc. So all the mucous membrane of these internal soft parts are suffering inflammation. It is caused by bacterium. Bacterium is name is Neisseria gonorrhea. It causes a burning sensation and pain. Penicillin is the or ampicillin is used for controlling this disease. Penicillin, ampicillin helps what? It fights the bacteria. Another disease is syphilis, which is more serious. It is caused by Treponema pallidum. Treponema pallidum. Mucous membrane of the genital, rectal and oral regions or lesions are caused. Lesions are caused on the mucous membrane of the genital, rectal and oral regions. Here also urinogenital tract and rectal region and throat. It is transmitted through body fluids, including the saliva, transmitted through body fluids. It is again treated by penicillin only and sometimes tetracycline because they are antibiotics. Antibiotics will kill bacteria. Another important disease is acute immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS. It is caused by HIV virus. Those two are caused by bacteria, syphilis and gonorrhea. This is caused by virus, warts and AIDS. It is fast spreading incurable disease not only in humans but also in certain apes and other animals. It weakens the immune system. That is a major problem. It weakens the body's immune system. That means what? You will lose immunity. When you lose immunity, you will be easily falling sick. You will not be recovering from whatever disease you get. So your health will keep falling. There will be continuous regular degradation of the health. It spreads even from contaminated needles or infective blood. Not necessarily there has to be a transfer of body fluid. It can even spread from needles or blood. Zeovodine or acidothymidine are some of the medicine used only to prolong the life of the HIV infected patient. You cannot save but only prolong their life. There is no cure even today. Another is warts caused again by the viral infection. Now, as a part of reproductive health, healthy pregnancy is important. For healthy pregnancy, what we should ensure? We should ensure nutrient-rich food and spacing between subsequent pregnancy so that general health of the mother is there and mother is getting enough nutrition during the gestation period for both the mother and child. What should not be there? Healthy pregnancy is lost if there is malnutrition. That is not enough good food. Substance misuse, cigarette or alcohol or drugs, substance misuse, stress. If you are having physical or mental or emotional stress, that is why you should say mother should be kept happy. Radiation. Radiation can be from the X-ray lab or from the sun or from anywhere. Radiation will impact the child. And then harmful effects on the fetus, including mental retardation, will be caused if these factors are affecting the mother during the pregnancy. Thanks for watching this video. Please keep coming back for more such